Hello, Stitchers. Welcome to Stitch Please, the official podcast of Black Women Stitch, the sewing group where Black Lives Matter. I'm your host, Lisa Woolfolk. I'm a fourth-generation sewing enthusiast with more than 20 years of sewing experience. I am looking forward to today's conversation, so sit back, relax, and get ready to get your stitch together. Hey friends, hey, it's Lisa from Black Women Stitch and the Stitch Please podcast, and I am so excited to welcome you to this episode of the podcast. As I say every week, this is a very special episode. This episode is with Shams Eldine Rogers, a friend of the pod, a friend of Black Women Stitch. She is a former guest. She was back with us in episode 123 back in 2022, talking about sustainable creativity. Shams is such a powerful advocate for creativity and sustainability. She works in so many capacities to help people learn about the power of your dollar and the weight and responsibility of what it means to spend in a society that says you can never have too much stuff. Welcome to the program, Shams. Thank you so much for coming and talking with us today.
Thank you, Lisa. You know, it's a lot of work that you're doing to have this program, to have this space for Black women and femmes to be creative, especially in the sewing field, but sometimes you expand that out of that and you go to events every time you can, the frock tales, and one time you had a separate space at a quilt convention, and you are doing so much so that we communally can get better, can be happier, can be safer in our spaces. And so not only am I thrilled to be here, I want to ask everybody listening, remember, you don't need some of the mess you have. I didn't need Netflix. I didn't need Hulu. It was Audible. I put those all onto my monthly Black Women Stitch. Try to think about, if you want institutions in your community, what are you doing to bring them about? How are you keeping them afloat? So I'm thrilled that you're doing this. I'm happy to be a supporter of your projects. And I'm looking forward today to our conversation about what are we sewing with? What are we sewing on?
Yes.
And is there a way that we can make that more liberating and still keep our creative needs met? Are we finding that there's a gap between those things sometimes? And also, what is liberation when we talk about what we're sewing on and what we're sewing with? And so
yes.
I'm really happy that you've invited me for us to talk about this.
And you are the perfect person to discuss this with because you do believe so strongly in sustainability. And the question of sustainability, it's not just a verb. It's also a noun. If we are working with sustainability, that means we can continue to do this. The reason that we believe or prioritize sustainability is because we want to keep going.
Right.
We don't want to just use up what we have and then it's gone. If we can work in ways that allows this to be more generative, it can last a bit longer. So let's begin with, how did you start? How did you come to the ideas around the need for a new approach to creative consumerism?
So my parents, who are both Black people from Detroit, were interested in international perspectives. Before I was born and in my early life and throughout their lives, they've been interested in what's going on in Africa, which has changed, of course, over the course of my 55 years being alive, but it's still more the same. People's resources are being taken. They're not being given proper compensation. Their problems are not given proper attention. I'm talking about people in Africa. My parents particularly focused on Africa and later to sub-Saharan Africa and then Southern America. So North America and South America. They were often asking or confronting the problem of, we still got to live here. While we're writing letters, while we're doing protests, we still got to live here. We still got to be part of the system.
Mm-hmm.
I've taken from that kind of a thinking about, if you're voting for anything, if you're making any choices, what is it going to do to the brothers and sisters who have the least?
Mm.
And sometimes I come into conflict with that as well, and I'll talk about that later. But that was the beginning. And my parents were saving everything. They were saving the old containers of mayonnaise. We had hand-me-downs. I think I mentioned to you on the other podcast, we had hand-me-downs from other families. I think for a long time we would get one Easter dress new, and we would get socks, underwear, and shoes, because Daddy said bad shoes might affect your feet. Other than that, all of our coats, over boots, scarves, hats, regular clothes, all that stuff was secondhand. And I just grew up with that ideology. So once I was on my own as an adult, and I'll especially say once I was in graduate school, and I had a graduate student stipend in order to pay my bills and buy my books and do whatever I had to do, that's it. Some people were complaining about the size of the stipend, but while still making that thrifting lifestyle, I was able to live within the stipend during the years that I was in graduate school. And there were two thrift shops on my way between the main campus and my apartment. So I would walk down to the university, and on my way back, I would stop and see if there's anything I need in there. And this was before the thrift shop expensiveness happened.
Okay.
So often I would find things that I needed. Again, you got to go regularly, but I would find things. It might be 10 cents for a cup. You might find a plate. You might find a skillet. And that allowed me to live with ease within that graduate student confinement. I did something else too. Sometimes people would throw away cans and bottles in the university trash cans.
Okay.
And that's worth 10 cents. So,
right.
On my way from one part of campus to the other, I would just stop by every garbage can on my way and just look inside and see if I saw one. Get it with the plastic bag, put it in the plastic bag, and then at the end, I would go to what they call a party store in Michigan and turn in my deposits and get my money. Shoot.
Wow.
Free money lying around.
Just sitting there.
So these are the kinds of attitudes that I do. And I do go to some lengths that not everybody would go to. Mm-hmm. But my philosophy has developed through those years of having these parents who were very thrifty and about humans. And then I remained very thrifty and concerned about humans. So that's kind of how I've developed the philosophy is, okay, what is it doing to humans, to the persons who created it, to the persons who are using it, and to the persons who have to deal with its disposal. These are going to be the greatest guidelines. Of course, humans live in an environment. So we have to think about the effect on the humans of the environmental choices that we're making as well. But that's been my guide all this time.
Yes. And that can translate very easily to a conversation about today's topic, which is cheap versus expensive sewing machines. Mm-hmm. That's the general mode that I'm going for. That there seems to be, in your words, almost like an arms race with sewing machine companies to build either the biggest or the most expensive or the most spectacular. What are you seeing in the industry with the sewing machine companies as you have noticed it over the years?
So, a sewing machine really only has to do 4 things. It has to lower the needle. It has to bring the bobbin thread and lock with the needle. The needle has to come up, and it has to move the fabric. That is a sewing machine. These can be maintained at home. You can have them that are human powered. That is all you have to sew. And you can sew many beautiful garments with just a straight stitch sewing machine. I had as my first sewing machine an unmentioned brand, but it's also out of business. I had my grandma's machine from 1952. Wow. And I had that straight stitch machine, I think the first 8 years of my sewing, maybe 10 years of my sewing, I had this machine. That was it. Big old honking, clunking thing, but it was producing great straight stitches.
I bet it was beautiful stitches.
It was beautiful stitches. Then when I needed to have pinked the edges, I had pinking shears. If I needed to sew stretch fabric, I sewed bigger stitches and stretched the fabric while I was doing it to get good fabric. I even sewed a wetsuit with that bad boy.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's all you have to sew. You
Okay.
can also sew by hand.
Yes.
When you want to have something more, and after those first 8 years, I wanted to have something more, they sell machines which can move the fabric or move the needle. They can zigzag
Mm-hmm.
and also can sometimes make designs while you're stitching. They can
Yes.
move the needles and move the fabric to make designs. There are sewing machines that are also embroidery machines
Yes.
that have a bed where you put a hoop on your
Mm-hmm.
fabric and stabilizer, and you program into that, and then the embroidery that you programmed in, limited by the size of your machine's capabilities and the size of your hoop, you can make that pattern, and it'll still be just one needle though. It's just one needle that goes
Yes.
up and down, wraps the thread, loops, locks the thread, comes up and moves the fabric. That's still all that's happening, but it has
Yes.
a much bigger area to do that with.
Right.
There are machines available in the world that do many more things than that.
Yes.
But usually for a home sewer, you will have one needle and it will do that job, again, variously, powered by hand, powered by machine, directed with an electronic cog inside,
Mm-hmm.
or direct. There are also some you can buy that you can put these little cams in there,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or it can move directed by a computer.
Yes.
And I notice that there has indeed been a kind of an arms race in that manufacturers strive to be the best at getting your money from you, but the best at offering a sewing experience that is more varied.
Hmm.
So I don't still have grandma's 1952 sewing machine, but I do have some straight stitch only machines from early in the 20th century.
Mm-hmm.
Then I have from the 21st century, I have machines that will make designs for me, that will move the fabric within a certain limit. I haven't
Right.
chosen the embroidery machine. I bought an inexpensive one and I just said, I just don't love it. I,
Okay.
I like to sew. All of these machines are great. I have 7 or 8 great machines. But then we ask, why didn't you buy the top of the line machine from the vendor that you have, Shums? Why didn't you buy?
Hmm.
Well, I didn't choose the top of the line because all of my feet, all of my press-on feet,
Yeah.
they don't fit the newest machine from that manufacturer.
Oh.
And all my other machines from that manufacturer take those feet.
Wow.
And my bobbins, I have, I think, 2 generations of bobbins because I have some from 85 years before the others. But I have 2 types of bobbins. That is yet a third bobbin that I would have to buy the top of the line. It's really cool. It's got a laser coming out in front of it to show you where you're going to stitch.
Mm-hmm.
And it has amazing variety of stitches. But I looked at myself saying, wait, I paid all this money for these feet, and then I'm going to have to pay it again for the new feet. Plus, the feet aren't cheap. The feet are $40, $50.
Oh no, they are not. And sewing machine presser feet can be very expensive because they're the little technology that makes this that
Mm-hmm.
changes the stitch. So of
Mm-hmm.
course it's going to be it can be an investment.
So I also don't like waste. I don't
Mm,
like when I have something that is perfectly fine and then I'm supposed to replace it with a new something. And that just doesn't apply to sewing. I wait for things to die. I waited for the washing machine to die. I didn't like that washing machine, but it came with the house when we bought it. I'm just waiting. I'm repairing it. I'm buying pieces and repairing it.
right.
Eyes, it could go. That's the that's the kind of philosophy I have. So I didn't choose the top of the line because I would have then had all these other wasted pieces.
Yes.
And also because I just don't sew like that.
Mm,
Already I have more than enough decorative stitches on the machines that I have.
yes.
Personally don't need that machine with that many more. I think I already have 800 stitches or something on my.
Right.
What am I going to do here? Personally, I didn't need to go that far. But I
Okay.
notice that some people do. When we talk about the
Mm-hmm.
arms race, it's also the customers who I think are getting onto social media. They don't necessarily mean to provide pressure to the other people, but they're
Right.
showing all their cool stuff that they can do with their new sewing machine and their new sewing embroidery combo.
Yes.
These sewing embroidery combos, it's as much as a car, some of them.
Hey, friends. Hey, I know you're enjoying the audio version of Stitch Please, and thanks so much for listening. But you're missing out on all the great stuff going on behind the scenes. That's why I'm inviting you to join our Black Women Stitch Patreon. For as little as $5 a month, you can see all the video versions of the podcast. Plus, you get some amazing swatch cards. You know how much I love these swatch cards. Look, see how cool these are? Oh wait, you can't see them because you are not yet on the Patreon. So when you join the Patreon, you'll be able to see this, me showing you these amazing cards. We also have some great perks at the other tiers, like discounts, swag, office hours, and more. Don't be the last sewist in the group now. Head over to patreon.com/blackwomenstitch or click the link in the show notes and become a Patreon supporter today. We truly cannot do this without you. So thank you so much. Some of them are quite expensive. There's been some new machines that are coming out that are $20,000. It is a single needle machine, domestic machine for home use. Typically, if I were to hear that number, I would think this is something you could have in industry. But it is not something in industry. And even the phrase top of the line is an interesting phrase because top of the line refers to the ranking of a particular sewing machine brand's machines, their products. They come in a variety of categories, and those categories tend to be ranked by price. And the line of the sewing machine could have some that are very basic, some that are beginners, they're a lot smaller. And then as you move up the line to get to the top, that is where you get the most features, the most new bells and whistles, and it is the one that will cost the most. So the idea that we even have the phrase in our sewing vocabulary, top of the line, means that we are aware that there is a machine that is up there at the top, top features, top pricing. And then, at least for me, I'm like, well, that's at the top of the line. Let me go down a few more pegs and see if I can get all my needs met, but also not feel like I need to spend a tuition price for the machine. So that's where the kind of the top of the line phrase comes from, just to clarify for those listening. But yeah, it definitely feels like a hierarchy of sewing machines that the companies are offering. And I'm actually pretty shocked that this top of the line that you're discussing would not be compatible with the things below it, because that seems to kind of accelerate a certain type of obsolescence.
Exactly so. I want to go back to this question of line. When they decide what they're going to offer at each price point, they make decisions of, okay, if we're just going to give you a basic machine, give you a zigzag, give you 28 stitches, and we're a reputable sewing machine company with a good background, we're going to give you that. We're going to give you $400, $500. You can use this. There's nothing wrong with it. You can use it all the time. Oh, but did you want a needle threader? Now we're going to raise the price again. Did you want it to cut underneath?
Yes. Do you want it to knot off and cut?
Yes. So all of these things are them saying, we could have put that on the basic machine too. The price for this isn't that high, but we chose what we were going to give at each price point. Then when you look at the catalogs or the online presentation, they show the younger person using the inexpensive one. They show as you go along and the prices are going up, they're getting older. Sometimes they'll show, for example, someone who resembles a grandma instructing a grandchild.
Right.
You get older as you go to the top of the line because, frankly, most of the people who are going to buy a $21,000 machine, or let's say even a $5,000 machine, they're not young, because
Right.
you can't eat that machine.
No. It's definitely tied to income, and income tends to be tied to age.
Right. And when you're younger, you may have more demands on your income.
Yes.
Some people like yourself are parents, and then they have these young people who need shoes, who need
Yes.
food, who need, so those people may not have as much disposable income,
Right.
even if they did have somehow the same income as some of the older people. The manufacturers know who's going to get this.
They do.
It's going to be most likely a younger person, but she may be an engineer. Men get these too, but their target is clearly women. That's who they're showing in their ad.
Yes.
The younger person, she may be an engineer, she may be a doctor, she may be able to get that $21,000 machine at a young age. But mostly, it's a retired person.
Yes.
And I read that active sewists spend over $400 a month on average in the older age range.
Interesting.
Forgot the name of that industry group that does this, Sewing Yarn Craft Council, I think.
Okay.
They said that that's what the older generation was spending, $400 a month relating to their sewing. That could be advertised on their machine. It could be exciting threads.
Right.
I certainly know people who that's their main hobby.
Yes.
And they go to the quilt store every day and bring their machines and chill out at the quilt shop talking to the lady. Oh, I need that, but I need one of those too. I need one of those too. That's a life choice that a lot of these people
Yes.
make.
Yes.
So when we talk about sustainability with those, and I said I have 7 or 8 machines. So I have 3 types of vintage of the brand that I like. I believe I have 2 of each of the main vintage, 2 of each that are hand or foot operated.
Yes.
2 that are a nice functioning older machine, and then 2 top of the line. You say, well, why do you have 2 of everything? Because I have 2 houses. So I have 2 of each. And I didn't always have this many. At the beginning of the pandemic, when we were sewing those masks, I was really with only 1 functioning sewing machine.
Wow.
But then I noticed, first, what if this goes down? How am I going to be able to keep up this capacity? That the machine I have did not snip the thread, and masks are short.
Yes.
So you're going. Okay, now stop, pull it, put it to the side, and maybe you're going to chain it. Now you have to come back and snip it. You know what? I went out, I bought another machine that could do that for me. And I'm saying in early June 2020. And from the same manufacturer as I already had. And then I just started to say, well, what if I had a backup that was just basic? That's where I could buy these vintage machines, the ones that I'm talking about, except the 2 computerized ones.
Yes.
All of these are vintage machines that I bought in Canada. So you scour the ads. Remember, everybody was being socially distant. You scour you verify that the machine is what it's supposed to be. You have the person snake their power cord out of their house so you can check it. And I'm saying I was buying these for 30 US dollars is 20 Canadian dollars. No, wow. Buying 30 Canadian dollars is 20 US dollars. So I bought these things for $30 to a maximum of $100 Canadian. And took them in, cleaned them up, sent them to the salon for them to get their updo.
Right.
And then I have this collection that didn't cost very much to acquire and that I use for different purposes. One of those older machines can take a size 21 needle.
Wow.
And sometimes I'm making a bag or something for outdoor wear that I need that amount of punching power.
Right. That's right.
Some of them I don't use very much at all, but I have them in case I need them, and they don't go bad. They don't need you to take them to the salon every year. They use them and clean the oil out and use them when you want them. So I'm satisfied, and so with at least the middle level of those regularly. as well
Mm-hmm.
as the
Mm-hmm.
computerized machines. So people might say, I've chosen to opt out of this arms race. And I mean, I've chosen it in many ways in our
Mm.
society,
Yes.
saying, why do they want us to straighten our hair again so we don't look like God made us?
Mm.
Why do I need to spend all this money on clothing products, especially that are being made by exploited people?
Yes.
But when people come over your house, we have my aunt's couches that she gave me when she was going to the nursing home. She didn't
Hmm.
need her couches. My cousin had had them cleaned, so we brought them to our house. My husband's friend's wife said, you need to do something about these couches. These couches are tired. I was like, really? I like them. So separately, on another visit, my mom came in, and the first thing she did is said, no, those couches are not worthy of this house.
Oh.
They look worn.
Hmm.
Really? I'm in rural Vermont. So I started to ask people who were coming, who did live around us, what do you think about this? So, this is nice. That, but here's that pressure from people to say replace
Hmm.
goods, and then my mother was saying, well, you could at least reupholster it. There's not holes in the upholstery. At what point do we say this is done?
This is enough.
Right. This
My
is
needs are being met.
my needs. But I mean, when do we say something is ready to go? I had a friend. She gave me some towels in 1994 that she wanted me to give away.
Okay.
I'll give these to you because I know you can find some donate. Donate? Donate them right here. This is 2024. I'm still using them
Oh
towels.
my gosh. They
Wait,
still had 30 years of good use in them.
yes, to me, and I did. One of them had to go. One of them has had to go, but I still got the rest of them. Why am I buying a new towel somewhere? People are throwing out perfectly good towels. That's a choice. My friend from a higher socioeconomic background said to her they were done. To me, there's
Mm.
still 40 years use, 30 years left.
That's right. That's right. You know what I was thinking? I think as we were talking about the sewing machines and you were talking about the features, I think for me, there was a time when my earlier machines were not very expensive. I too was in graduate school on a stipend, even had a baby in our last year. And, there were certain things that I didn't need
Mm-hmm.
when I was in my late 20s. My vision was better. So threading a needle on the sewing machine was no big deal. Actually, when we were little girls, me and my sisters were the needle threader. My mother would call us, hey, one of y'all, Sybil, Stephanie, Kalisa, come here, come thread this. She would say, bring your young eyes over to this machine and thread this needle. And of course, I'm 8 and I'm like, I don't know what the big deal is, and now I need a needle threader. If I don't have a needle threader, I am going to be spending what feels like 10 minutes just trying to get the needle threaded so I can sew. And like there comes a way that things that might begin as luxuries, like a needle threader or something that backstitches and ties off the threads. It's like, well, that's just a luxury. You don't really need that. But now, for sure, the needle threader is a need. How do we travel the distance between, and I think this is a phrase that you've used, between what is ethical and still have like our needs met? Like, does it have to be that, you don't necessarily need a top of the line machine to get a needle threader, but you are going to pay for some reason a bit more. And I also am not missing the fact that the manufacturers push this choice off onto us as consumers rather than saying, let's give everybody a needle threader. That's a question of, we're making these machines more accessible for people to use. Everybody should have one, not just if you can pay an extra $800.
Well, I'm not sure where we put the ethics question in regards to purchases. Some sewing machines are still made where they were originally made.
Mm-hmm.
But most sewing machines are now made in countries where it's cheaper than the original manufacturer.
Hey, friends. Hey, we've covered a lot of ground in today's conversation with Shams Eldine Rogers. We explored the intricate layers of sustainability in sewing and the role of global manufacturing. We'll pause here, but be sure to join us next week as we consider the choices that shape our sewing. How do these decisions affect our communities and our environment? To find out more, come back next week and Shams will help us get our stitch together.
You've been listening to Stitch Please, the official podcast of Black Women Stitch, the sewing group where Black Lives Matter. We appreciate you joining us this week and every week for stories that center Black women, girls, and femmes in sewing. We invite you to join the Black Women Stitch Patreon community with giving levels beginning at $5 a month. Your contributions help us bring the Stitch Please podcast to you every week. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your support. And come back next week and we'll help you get your stitch together.